And welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. That's Paul Ciano, Marshall Sutcliffe, and we had a nice little opener there to kind of showcase some of what Limited has to offer in the format there with that one turn. I'll think about that turn for a while, the triple spell there from Shahar.
Yeah, and that's not really common. Those are kind of stacks that you see in standard when you have like multiple control meters kind of go at it. So that was really cool to see in the limited feature. But we also just got to see a lot of different decks, right? I mean, just watching Jessica's deck, you know, we saw her with the white aggressive strategy. We saw the food deck. We saw Demir. So a lot of different things you can do. And
as you can see, we've got our next match lined up as well, which is Matt Schmaltz from the USA versus Mike Sigrist, also from the USA. They both won their round. We got a chance to pop in and get at least a little bit of a preview of those from both of those players. And as we saw, Siegrist is on Gruul, and he's facing down Schmaltz, who is playing Golgari in this particular build.
Yeah, Schmaltz with the slower deck. I believe he's probably going to be playing the role of the control deck here. Just lots of different food synergies, multiple copies of Curious Pair, lots of blockers, double Spore Cap Spider. So definitely wants to go the long game. And as you can see, this is part of the reason why, right? When you have the Piper in your deck, you know, the longer the game goes, you kind of have inevitability because you have the ability to just steal all of your opponent's creatures. Mike, on the other hand, is playing an extremely aggressive Gruul aggressive deck with triple Ginger Brute. Triple Ginger Brute.
He brought a whole plate of cookies to the table?
He brought a whole plate, and on top of that, he's got the one copy of the Rosethorn Halberd, which is very impressive with the Ginger Brute.
By the way, check out this curve here for Mike as well. Wildborn Preserver into Grumgully, but he is not to be outdone here. Matt Schmaltz is like, I got rares. He's got the Piper here as well. So we've got a real slugfest here where the players seem to have drawn you know, some of the more powerful cards in their lists.
But Mike with, I mean, kind of very close to a constructed start here, right?
For both of them. There's an Oakham Adversary now on the other side, too.
Nice little sideboard card.
It's all rares and uncommons for both of our players here. So Piper of the Swarm. So which one would you rather have? Oakham Adversary and Piper of the Swarm?
Well, it depends on the rest of Mike's hand, right? Because how many more non-human creatures can Mike deploy this turn? Even if he plays a 1-drop. If he plays a Ginger Brute this turn, that's a 5/5.
But he's facing a Death Toucher.
That is true.
Although it is one of his best cards. And there is a Ginger Brute, so we're going to see the trigger here from the Preserver. How much mana will he dump into it?
He can turn it into a 5/5, but the thing is, like you said, he can't really attack with it. It looks like he has an additional Ginger Brute in hand. So if he can just choose to maybe make a pair of Ginger Brutes that are 2/2s and then just get in for 4 unblockable points of damage.
I think that's what we're going to see here. He also could put 1 counter on the Preserver to make it trade off with the Adversary, which, you know, to be honest, isn't the worst. That Adversary is a very good card, too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that does kind of keep open the window for potentially the Grumgully to attack next turn, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Grumgully's a 3/3.
Yeah.
And we're going to see one of the Ginger Brutes come in with that evasion ability that it has. Is it unique, perhaps? I don't think I've ever seen that on a card before. Can only be blocked by creatures with haste.
And it's...
Catch me if you can, it says.
Right. And now, I mean, this is a really tempting block here on the Preserver, right? You spend 2 mana on you got the discount already, and you have the potential to get that rare off the battlefield, but...
You kind of have to.
This is also a difficult choice, because Matt Schmaltz actually has what it looks to be out muscle in his hand. Right?
Oh.
So if he goes land out muscle, he can get that Preserver off the battlefield and have a 3/4 Death Touch in play, which could also block the Grumgully.
Ooh, that is very tempting, but he's going to take the more conservative line here and just get that thing off the battlefield now. Another thing to consider, of course, it's obvious, but he does, you know, save that damage as well. And when you're facing down 2/2/2 Ginger Brutes, you have to consider your life total very highly here.
And also, you might just want to outmuscle the Ginger Brutes, right? You're looking at a pair of 2/2 effectively unblockable creatures here, but Matt actually unable to find land number 4 to run out the outmuscle here. So Mike's going to continue to put on pressure here.
By the way, Paul, sentences you never thought you would say. You might want to outmuscle the Ginger Brutes. Like, how was your day at work? Well, we covered some important topics. Like outmuscling the Ginger Brutes. But that's where we find ourselves, Paul, and we would nowhere else we'd rather be than right here, talking Limited. And things are going to get very interesting here because the way that this has panned out now for Schmaltz is that Outmuscle doesn't look quite as good as it did a little while ago.
Yeah, however, if
Unless he finds a forest.
exactly, if he does find a forest, then all of a sudden that Mirror Leaf Rider can basically kill anything that's in play.
That's
So,
right.
well, with the exception of the
Now 4/5
yeah,
ogre.
the now 4/5 Ogre Errant, as he can turn it into a 4/2. So,
And Siegrist continuing to apply pressure, but in addition to building out his board, he's kind of doing both. Any additional mana goes into the Ginger Brutes, but he's been able to curve pretty reasonably here. So he's only been able to get in twice with the Ginger Brutes, but those are going to start slamming. You know, once he runs out of gas, you're just going to see him in every single turn.
yeah, and this is a tough draw. Matt Schmaltz did draw land number 4, which is what he wanted. However, it was a swamp, not a forest, so he can't cleanly remove one of the Grum Gullies or even one of the Ginger Brutes off the battlefield. Oh, he can. Pardon me. He can actually use it on the Piper to get one of the Ginger Brutes off the battlefield. But it looks like he's just going to go for a Curious Pair and also make a token with the Piper.
Yeah, that is one of the nice answers to some of the sort of big, dumb green and red creatures that he's facing. For example, this Ogre Errant is that if Schmaltz wants, he can just use rats to throw them under the bus. The problem is that he did stumble on his mana, and that's not a particularly mana-efficient way to get that job done.
Yeah,
He's gonna have to
spending 2 mana to get a 1/1 is not really what you want to be doing, especially when you're on the back foot.
And Siegrist's curve continues to impress here. He now has Garenbrig Paladin in his hand, as well as a Rosethorn Halberd, but you can see the curve that he's done. Uh-oh, Mike's doing combat math. This is not where you want to be if you're Schmaltz.
I mean, he's used all of his mana every single turn.
Yeah, and he probably will for most
Yeah.
of the game, right?
Yeah, with the Ginger Brutes in play especially. Oh, and look at that. That's a Rosethorn Halberd in Mike Sigrist's hand, so that can threaten lots and lots of damage.
It looks like he has decided to go for the Garenbrig Paladin this turn, as evidenced by his attack with just the Ogre Errant. And it actually does get a counter, but not from Adamant. And I don't know if you caught that, but Schmaltz was like, well, it doesn't get a counter. And then Sig's like, well,
actually
it does.
it
It just doesn't
does.
get 2.
Not a human knight. It is a giant knight. It is. So does Matt find... The thing is, even had he drawn a forest at this point, I mean, we got 2 creatures on the battlefield with 5 toughness. Outmuscle wouldn't even get those off the battlefield.
Yeah, man, Siegrist, his list is capable of putting out huge amounts of power. Really impressive.
Right.
Here goes the Cauldron. He's going to play a Scalding Cauldron and just pass the turn back. So this could take care of one Ginger Brute, but that is the least of his problems at this point. He is now facing down a massive board state and just hasn't been able to have as much board impact as Siegrist has. Curious Pair just not doing enough. The Piper has been pretty slow. The 1/1 rats don't really look great at this point. Siegrist does need to make sure that he applies enough pressure so that the Piper doesn't get out of control, but it looks like he's going to be able to do that with ease.
Yeah.
Here
And
comes the Halberd.
that extra line of text on the Paladin, huge here.
Yes.
As
Only one creature able to block it, Karan?
yeah, and if Mike Sigrist actually attacks with the Ogre Errant, it would just basically be unblockable, as he
Right.
give the Paladin, as it is a knight, menace when he attacks.
Menace and can't be blocked by creatures of power 2 or less. That
Oh, yeah,
means
so
no blocks.
7/6, effectively unblockable creature this turn, along with the pair of Ginger Brutes here. But there is that Scalding Cauldron in play.
So both of the Brutes are going to pick up their evasion ability and get to battering. Everything in the red zone, says Mike Sigrist. Right-click, attack all.
So yeah, now Schmaltz has to use a Cauldron on one of the Ginger Brutes just to stay alive, as he cannot block the Paladin. So that's 7 points of damage that's guaranteed to get in, along with an additional 2 from the other unblocked Ginger Brute that's in play.
So he's just going to lose it all here. A bunch of life total and his board.
Right, so he's going to have to throw some chump blockers in the way. He's just looking to see if there is a way to get one of the extra creatures off the battlefield. So he's got the Marrowleaf Rider, for example. He can put that in front of the Grumgully. He will likely put a rat in front of the Ogre Errant. Is there a way to kill the Ogre Errant? I don't think so.
No.
He could put 3 creatures in front of the Ogre Errant and then chump block the Grumgully. No, that doesn't look good either.
I think if you're Schmaltz, you're running through a similar thought process and going, that doesn't look good, that doesn't look good, that doesn't look good.
Nothing's great.
Yeah, there's probably one scenario where he can survive.
Yeah. And of course,
now
again,
these brutes are evasive right now,
right?
So those can't get blocked.
So the only creatures that he can block are the Grumgully and the Ogre Errant on that left side of the screen.
And so he can just use the call. Oh, nope, he's just going to pack it in. He says, there's no way out for me from this place. Even if he could survive that turn, he would have no board.
Yeah, he would have to have a sweeper, which I don't think there is for the Golgari deck. So.
Yeah, certainly not one that could get rid of creatures of that size, right? You know, we did see in this draft that there are some sweepers that cost less, like Witch's Vengeance, but unfortunately, A, he doesn't have one, and B, that wouldn't have got the job done.
Yeah, and you saw, I mean, this is kind of like the ideal start from that red-green non-humans deck. And actually, you know, taking a look at the way Mike's hand kind of developed, also a heads-up thing to kind of sandbag those Ginger Brutes, right? He didn't run them out immediately. Oftentimes you're like, oh, I got this. But his hand, just the way it curved out with the Grumgully, turning those, anytime you can just find ways to add power to that Ginger Brute, all of a sudden you have a very credible, unblockable threat that threatens to just end the game.
Yeah, it's insane, because as a 1/1, it's serviceable. Anytime it gets bigger than that, it's good.
Yeah,
like, and
for sure.
You know, of course, the bigger the better. But even just getting to 2 makes it like, right? I have to deal with this thing for the rest of the game. And that's what we saw here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have more live action from Mythic Championship VI. Don't go anywhere.
I've got reigning world champion Javier Dominguez here with me to crack a pack of Throne of Eldraine. So let's go for it, Javier.
Let's see.
All right, so what color are you hoping to be if you had your choice in draft?
Green.
Green?
Definitely green, yeah.
All right.
It's definitely green. So a bit like this.
All right, we've got a Tree Folk so far.
Yeah, I like this card a lot. It is very green.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a tree after all.
Yeah. There's this one is very good. The Brimstone Trebuchet.
Yeah, Trebuchet. Or Trebucket, you know, if you don't say it that way, that's not how you say it.
The Golden Egg, it is actually the best one of the ones we have. Like, those 3 are just like not very good. I think the Egg is a card you always play in the format, so it's definitely going to be very good. Those being installed.
No, not taking that, not taking the Paladin, not the land.
Wandermare, this is a very good card in the right deck, and it's also quite green.
Okay, Wandermare, we're thinking about it. Here's Glass Casket, not
very
bad.
Good removal spell. It is not as good as it looks, in my opinion, but it's still like good. And
Sir Alan.
Alan, the Lion's Claw. I think this one is probably the best card in the pack so far, but it is also like a quite expensive card, and white decks are usually like based on cheap creatures, so it's not that good.
Ooh, Blacklands Paragon is our rare.
I like this one.
Okay.
It is just like a very efficient card. Like, it just a 3/1 for 2 mana, which is always a fine ratio, you know. And this is very good because it can turn any knight you have into a removal spell by getting Death Touch. So.
Ooh, we've got a foil.
Another
Trebuchet.
Yeah. And the basic planes. Well, I would think the pick is clearly the Blacklands Paragon.
All right, Blacklands Paragon is the pick out of this pack. What kind of deck are you hoping to make with this card?
Probably Black-Red Knights. Black-Red Knights with all these ones.
Yeah, maybe we'll wheel a Trebuchet.
Yeah, hopefully you wield one, maybe the foil one. You know.
All right, well, good start to the draft here.
Yep.
Sweet rare Blacklands Paragon for Javier.
And welcome back to the booth here at Mythic Championship VI. Marshall Sutcliffe with Paul Chion. We're covering booster draft here, Throne of Eldraine, to kick things off. And this has a special weight on it at this tournament given how solved, I mean solved is kind of a strong term, but how well known and well sussed out the standard format is, there was only so much the players could do to tweak those lists to try to get prepared for it. And that means that a lot of the players turned to limited as the place where they could get the most edge, the most advantage over the field.
Yeah, and absolutely. And I feel like this is a very deep limited format because there are additional archetypes, right? Eduardo already touched on this earlier. Typically, you have the 10 color pairs. But on top of that, the fact that there's also just monocolor decks are actually good in this format. You know, you have those adamant cards that help fill out the last few cards of your deck. Cards like Hengewalker, etc., are ways for you to draft monocolor. So again, being open, finding your lane is even more important in this format than it has been in the past. So draft really where you can get a big edge in this tournament.
Interesting here, Paul Coulier is playing against Shahar Shenhar. We saw Shahar draft and play in the first round. But Paul has kind of an interesting build. He's drafted the red-blue archetype, which rewards you for drawing 2 cards in a turn. So generally speaking, it's your draw step plus then drawing a card on your turn, and you'll get some type of benefits. But it is interesting because the cards that are the payoffs for this archetype end up breaking down into pretty distinct tiers. And the top tier cards are easily the most important. They are the reason to play a deck like this. And he has one of them. He has the Ironcrag Pyromancer, arguably the best of them. You know, so that's good. That's the good news for him. That's what he wanted to see. But unfortunately for him from there, it does fall off pretty sharply because he's playing a bunch of Bloodhaze Wolverines and Steelgaze Griffins, which, you know, when you read them, you think, yeah, this might be fine. And they are. They're okay, but they're not a reason to be in this archetype. They tend to not get there as often as you would hope that they would. And he's kind of all in on it. So we'll see how it goes. But I got to say, he's already up a game against Shahar. That's no small feat.
Yeah, I mean, when you see somebody play Weaselback Redcap in their deck, you know that they really want to be aggressively slanted. And that's kind of the direction that Paul chose to go with. Because he couldn't find enough of the blue-red spells, blue-red draw 2 payoffs, he was like, look, I see a bunch of these Wolverines. I'm going to probably have to play all of them. And I just want to beat down. So I'm going to play some Weaselback Redcaps on top of that and just try to go underneath all my opponents.
You do what you got to do, I suppose. But let's let this game kind of do its thing because our main match is actually ready to go here where we've got Mike Sigrist and Matt Schmaltz facing off against each other here. Game number 1 ended up going fairly quickly as it was Siegrist who had the big curve with the big beat down creatures, and he ended up getting the job done in impressive fashion against Matt, though Matt will be on the play here for our next game, and we'll see if he can fight back and even things up at a game apiece.
Good old Curious Pair.
All right, Curious Pair here kicks things off. Snacks for everybody. It's a food. And he's just going to go the 1 into the 2 here. Now, does Siegrist have a good aggressive opener here? I did see him draw Rimrock Knight off the top of his library, which could give him an attacker into the Curious Pair, though it would just be a trade. Oh, he's got the Oakham Adversary.
That is brutal.
That is absolutely devastating here because he got the cost reduction on it. Oh, Gingerbread Cabin tapped again here for Schmaltz. That's actually the second time we've seen that happen to him. And boy, those things can be really punishing if you are kind of in the middle.
Ooh, but he
and
does
now
have
we're going to see
Carver.
Yeah, this is going to be calling it a 2-for-1 is probably not correct. Oh, but barge in right back at you.
So that becomes a 3/5. But this is a trampled Death Toucher. So Mike will actually be able to draw a card here.
And get in for 2. So really good.
Big turn.
Big turn for Siegrist. Having that pump spell was absolutely huge. Now, it is important to note here from Schmaltz's perspective that the Garenbrig Carver did resolve. Shields might resolve, so it's still on an adventure. So he can still cast it next turn, and it is a good blocker for the adversary. That said, there's Wildborn Preserver. Siegrist never misses a beat. He draws Fling. Wow, Wildborn Preserver Fling anybody?
That could get the job done.
It could be a lot of damage.
Job done. So yeah, Mike, if he doesn't have another pump spell, if you can find a way to get that Garenbrig Carver off the battlefield, of course this is going to be massive. So
he has another barge in.
Oh, he does.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the question now is, does he want to try to set up for a later turn, or is get in while the getting's good while Matt's tapped out? And it is really tempting.
Yeah.
The question is, the issue I think that Mike faces is I believe he only has access to one red source, and he could cast Grumgully this turn or something along those lines. What is he going to do? He's going to play 2 Unveiled Tree Folk, so he's just going to buff up the Oakham adversary. So he is going to do a version of Get In While the Getting's Good, and this one uses up all 4 of his mana.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this is the safest path, and now there's a 4/5 on the battlefield. Matt needs to put additional threats on the battlefield. If he puts an extra creature in play, I mean, it's probably not going to be big enough, so Matt probably has to do a double block. You know, a lot of pressure.
Margin.
A lot of pressure. Not only that, he can't even outmuscle because he's got the 3/2 in play, so.
Ah, good point, Paul. Yeah. There's the Garenbrig Paladin with enough green sources to give it the +1/+1 counter. So he has now produced 8 power on his side of the battlefield.
So
That
Mike,
was a Ginger Brute.
so Mike with the barge in can turn his adversary into a 6/7. So if Matt Schmaltz does go for a double block, he would be able to kill the adversary.
But isn't Mike just like, sure?
Alternatively,
Right?
Mike can just choose to keep it in play and maybe even fling
Yes.
the preserver just to kill the carver, and then also just get a good trade in with the with the paladin, right? Get both creatures off the battlefield, and you still have
Yes.
the adversary who's a 4/5 in play.
Right, and Mike has so many options available here that are all attractive.
Right.
I mean, in his worst case, if Matt goes double block and Mike goes go to damage.
Right.
Like, he's still just getting a 2-for-1. Like,
Exactly.
it's just good no matter how it goes.
Oh, and
it's
so brutal.
margin number 2 to run over the single block from the Garenbrig Paladin.
And he's going to deal 5
Crunch.
damage.
5 more damage and another card.
Yeah, trample and death touch. Very,
Unbelievable.
very strong.
You know, you meet Mike Sigrist in real life and you think, what a nice guy. Maybe not. That was rude. Now he's going to follow up with Ginger Brute and Grumgully, but not in that order, to make sure he gets the counter.
Wow.
Wow. Mike Sigrist is just rolling here. Our MPL player showing why he gets so much respect in the limited community and
He's like,
smashing
I've had
Matt
enough.
Schmaltz. He's like,
I've had enough.
dude, easy on me, buddy. And
I mean,
extends the hand. There was nothing Matt could do.
That
He
was
in such a
back-to-back
bad
turns
spot.
of blocking, losing your creature, taking trample damage. Your opponent just drew an additional card and played an extra creature. I mean, talk about tempo swings.
Yeah.
And damage swings. And all the swings.
You know, the funny part is the most important part of that game, the best moment of that game for Siegrist was when Schmaltz went Curious Pair on turn 2, and he's like, we're in business, baby. Because then he got to play his Oakham adversary, and he rode that thing to victory.
Absolutely.
If it was, you know, some black 2-drop, Siegrist is sitting there not doing a whole lot.
Yeah, I mean, we could have seen a reasonable fair game of Magic.
Yeah.
But instead, Siegrist was
saw
not having any of that.
Very unreasonable,
Yeah.
very unfair game. All right, well, it looks like we're going to pop over and see Shahar Shenhar here. And who is he playing against again? Oh, yeah, this is Paul Coulier.
The
Or
draw
maybe
2
it's
deck.
Coulier. I don't actually know how he pronounces it. He is from the U.S. And, yeah, he was up a game before. So this is probably still the game that we had popped in on before. Is that Witch's Vengeance
It
going
looks
on
like
the
a
stack?
Witch's Vengeance. What are we getting here?
Well, I see a Mad Ratter doing its thing with a couple of rats on the battlefield, but it did look like Shahar got a 2-for-1 from whatever he named there.
Oh. And it looks like Paul won? Because he was up a game, right?
Yeah, Shahar doesn't look particularly happy, though. Did we see a handshake there?
Yeah, it looked like a handshake.
Okay, yeah. Then, yeah, that would be Paul winning 2-0, if that's the case. Yeah, you can see Shahar give a little head shake there. He doesn't look like a happy camper. And he's going to sign that match slip. So Paul Coulier, nice job.
Yeah.
Goes up against, you know, one of the many tough opponents in this pod and manages to come away with the win.
Yeah, just getting aggressive here. We were talking about the 4 Bloodhaze Wolverines, but hey, I mean, if you've built your deck around it and can put enough pressure, I mean, he does have lots of reach as well. You know, he has a Slaying Fire and a Searing Barrage in his deck too, so.
Well, it looks like our timing's just not great here today, Paul, because I just saw another handshake. It looks like Guillaume Wafotapa, who you can see on the far end of the table there, just picked up his match as well. And I'm not going to lie, a little bit above. That's Pinto that he was playing against, but apparently his deck is nice. Wafotapa's like, he's got some stuff going on in there with this mill deck where apparently, now it's going to slip my mind, but he first picked like a good, I don't know, red card or something like that,
Sure.
and then got past a midnight clock and was like, whoop, giddy up, U-turn, never mind, I'm in with this, and did not look back. He has 2 of them, it seems.
Wow.
So, they say a clock is right twice a day, and for him it's like midnight twice.
I mean, if you, okay, look, it has a rare symbol on it, and it's blue. Guillaume's probably going to take it.
Yeah, that's
Let's
true.
Be real.
That's
right?
true. Yeah, and I guess he has like a bunch of Merfolk secret keepers and stuff like that.
Okay, so that sounds
Arena
pretty
players
cool.
are
Maybe
like,
we'll
I know how this deck works, and but it did look like it got the job done there. So what we're going to do now is that's going to do it for our live round 2 here. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, though, we'll have Maria and company at the desk. Don't go anywhere.